What happens when you combine the most innovative, eccentric and charismatic leaders, disruptors and founders from tech, with the pedigree and history of one of the most established institutions within the City of London? The Searching for Mana podcast will be produced in partnership with the London Stock Exchange. I'm Lloyd Wildhead, the host of Searching for Mana. We're going to be interviewing some of the leaders, influencers and disruptors in the tech space, where I'm going to be trying to dig in and find out what's their mana, their superpower, their magic. Steffen, welcome onto the Searching for Mana show.
Thank you very much for having me.
So Steffen, if we can, I wouldn't mind starting with, I guess, just an opportunity for any of our listeners that perhaps have been living under a rock, maybe give a little bit of an introduction to Volt, tell us who they are, and a little bit about what's happening with you guys right now.
Yeah, with pleasure. At Volt, we are pursuing the vision of global account-to-account payments. We believe that the future of payments is real-time. Real-time is the only time, as we say here. And you see this macroeconomic trend of many markets around the world building their own real-time payments infrastructure. We started here in Europe under Payment Service Directive 2, building API-based bank-initiated payments. We are regulated EMI here in Europe and the UK, so we're in the money flow, which allows us to do really interesting things and provide value-added services to merchants and PSPs. We were really focused on capturing large enterprise merchants and PSPs, such as WorldPay, Worldline, Farfetch, some airlines, and to make sure that they have a great end-to-end experience in the real-time world of account-to-account with pay-ins, with payouts, refunds, anything that you need to operate a modern e-commerce business. Since then, we also have ventured out into the world. So we are live in Australia, since, again, we want to follow this international vision. Australia is one of the most exciting markets for account-to-account. So you have one-off payments. It's also one of the markets where you will be able to reach feature parity with cards, which is the holy grail of account-to-account, competing with cards. So you can have the Uber experience in the account-to-account world with a separate authorization, separate capture, also recurring payments for the subscription economy. Ultimately, we believe that also will facilitate a path to point of sale. And that's why we decided to expand to Australia, and we will continue our international expansion.
Fantastic. And it seems like a lot going on over the last few years. If I can just start with your own personal journey, Steffen, that you obviously joined Volt as a co-founder, but initially as a CTO and now leading the company as a CEO. Can you tell us a little bit about that transition, kind of what's changed for you sort of personally and professionally? And then the second part of that question is kind of, what drew you to Volt initially and what kind of keeps you most energized about your mission today?
Yeah, so I've definitively enjoyed myself thoroughly here at Volt, being in the most action-loaded role at a given time of the venture journey. So, we have a quite funny founding story that we started the business literally on the same day as the lockdown for COVID started. So we were 3 founders. 2 of them have retired to explore the crypto space and build new ventures. We were also based in different locations, one in Poland, one in Portugal, one in the UK, which we thought, it's great. It brings together the best ingredients of Europe, right? So you have regulated fintech based out of the UK, you have engineering power from Poland, and you can build a nice customer support team in Portugal, possibly even also the Netherlands, where the other founder was based. So we thought, let's combine the greatest things of Europe. And then Brexit happened, and then COVID lockdown happened. So that has already created quite some complexity for us back then. For practical reasons, I was based in Poland. I had a lot of payments experience. Was also close here with the engineering team. So we started building an engineering team here in Poland after the seed round led by Fuel Ventures. It was, I believe, January 2020 back then. From there, we had grown then the next adjacent team, which is, of course, the product team. Right? So once you have product, you want tech and product, then you want to build a commercial team. So we had grown all of this. And so at the Series A, I then transitioned towards COO, since it's like kind of a lifeline or life journey of a fintech or any startup, right? So C through A is kind of the product development and tech time where you build all of this. Then afterwards, you move more towards commercial operationalization. We also received our EMI licenses back then, so there was a lot of internal work to coordinate all this. And then for the past 9 months, I've now been interim CEO with the intention to make this a more permanent arrangement. And I've very much enjoyed all of these roles. I think also, especially considering all this technical evolution and the complexity that you really quickly have in such a startup, also in fintech, the real-time aspect really makes things also very complex here and there. So I do have some technical debt, but I'm certainly not as deep in the weeds as our CTO, Daniel. So it was definitely a need to have someone who is much more close to all the innovation projects, to infrastructure, to technical choices. So I was like, really it was really a specialist role. And we have many also advisors around the business now for technical advisory, also for product advisory. So we believe very much in having a core team, but having a set of advisors around us to build, which then also ultimately cleared the path for me to focus more on the operations, on scalability, getting customers live. Back then, we very successfully entered the most exciting sector for us, which was winning PSPs. So WorldPay, Worldline. Currently, we have a few dozen of those very complex organizations live with us. And that required absolute focus. It required payments expertise and end-to-end management across the organization. So there was a natural step moving from tech product towards operations to coordinate the product development, but also the commercial onboarding of merchants, leveling up compliance, and with the retirement of my co-founders towards their own new venture journey, there was another vacancy for which our board thought I might be a good fit. So that's how I ended up in interim CEO role.
Fantastic. And I'm sure the team and the investor and the market think you're doing a phenomenal job there. You interestingly touched upon kind of building and growing, particularly through tech and product, and then operations, and then obviously very much into commercial. Naturally, where Dan and I sit as an exec search firm, we're heavily biased in the regard of how important talent is, and particularly through growth stage, investor-backed and venture-backed businesses, and how important that it is to scale it, with the right individuals, and how important the right person or right talent is at particular moments of a company's journey. How have you found hiring and keeping and retaining kind of the best minds in fintech, which is, particularly in the last couple of years, has not been it's not been any small feat, right? That's quite a challenge in its own right. And kind of is there a secret to sort of maintaining and building kind of a best-in-class team at Volt?
Yeah, so tech and fintech are very competitive in terms of talent acquisition, talent retention. As you probably saw my CV, I've spent quite some time also in San Francisco, where it's even tougher, where you have very short stints at businesses. But the reality is also for a commercial salesperson, commercial person, or commercial leader to really have an impact, build a pipeline, you need to have that person at least for 12, 15 months. Now, sales cycles are very long, and the same with products. The product development cycles are long. So you cannot afford as a business to have people on board for less than 2-3 years, simply because it's so knowledge intense and everything takes long. So that is definitively an important learning, how you manage that across functions. And it's all about culture and building a predictable, sustainable business. So you want to have long-term thought. You don't want to change strategy every 6-9 months. You really want to think through what you will be doing in 18-24 months, so that you can hire the right people for the right verticals, but also for the right knowledge gaps you have in the team. It's just such a specialist role in many aspects. The other thing that's definitely also was a learning that there is, I think we have like different cultures in the team, right? So one team based in Poland, one in the UK, which are our main hubs. So making sure that we have people who can operate across cultures, who can also operate and communicate across different functions, right? So we are really function heavy for engineering and tech in Poland and very commercial group headquarter functions in the UK. So there's a cultural and geographical and functional gap. So getting through this is very important, which is also how we are reshaping our recruitment process to make sure to specifically test for ability to communicate, to operate in such an environment successfully. The other thing that we definitely also experienced is that we have grown very quickly. Hiring people that can go through this very fast venture journey for a time of 2-3 years is very intense. We have some people that have been with us for 5 years, but it takes a toll, right? So when you grow so fast, when you do so many things, so many projects, the pressure is high. You need to deliver. You win very big customers who completely change the game versus the customers you win in the first 1, 2, 3 years. So you need to have people in the team that evolve with you, that can evolve, that can think from a blank sheet of paper with every single project. And also hiring people that come into the business with an open mind to experiment and to learn things again, right? Things that they maybe thought they already did before and know inside out. Like that is part of the innovation. Like a lot of things in payments are repetitive. It's not like a most innovative business or the vertical ever. So there's 80% that you repeat, but 20% that is magic that you want to build yourself, that you want to do better, that you want to be more efficient in, that where you want to reduce costs, where you want to use AI, where you want to use new technology. So it's really important to find that mindset. We ourselves in the early days adopted this extreme ownership concept. So Jacko Willings, I'm sure you've heard it before. And we tried to map this to our engineering culture and from there carry it into the organization so that we then recruit for that mindset, but also shape the organization and processes how we take decisions accordingly.
And you mentioned there actually that kind of a little bit about the evolution of kind of payments there, but like, do you think the promise of real-time payments, open finance, these areas are being fulfilled, or do you think that we're still at the earlier stages of this growth?
Yeah, for me, this has been a long journey. So I've been now in payments and fintech for 12 years. I actually wrote my graduate thesis at Adyen about Payment Service Directive 1, so 10, 11 years ago. So for me, the journey towards open banking and PSD2 and Vault has been much longer. It didn't start with our seed round. It started even 6 years earlier. I think there are countries that do this better, or geographies. So if you look at open finance and open banking, especially payments, there are different approaches, right? So they have an approach like in Brazil where the central bank just says, this is the perfect payment system. Everybody should build it. And yeah, it's great. I agree. It's really close to perfect or to a very good payment system. You have the approach that Europe took with a decentralized approach where there was a regulatory framework and then further realized innovation. You have a different approach again in Australia where the banks came together and built a new payments platform. So each of these kind of types of innovation have different execution. If I look at Europe, I don't think we've executed to the gold standard. So, I mean, PSD2 will, of course, move us forward again. But if you compare Europe to other markets, then I think I would have hoped for more, right? So in terms of technical standardization, access, processes, so there's a lot of work that is still being done now in different working groups. For instance, in the UK, they're of course working on VRP and CVRP, which will be exciting once it's fully worked out and fully commercialized. But there's still work to be done, which is also why we back then said, even though we very much focus and believe in open banking and account-to-account, ultimately it's uncertain how quickly the adoption will be pushed forward. It's also uncertain how much of this will depend on regulators and banks. So let's focus rather on a global play, on a diversification play, so diversified by product in Europe, but also diversified by geography, which is why we then started offering accounts, because it significantly enhances the value of our open banking product to all our merchants. It's just an expectation. It's not only a value add, it's something you just need to have to succeed and to overcompensate for some things where open banking itself didn't hit the mark.
Just before we press record, you mentioned obviously that that you noted that on our core show with Lloyd, we've interviewed quite a number of the leading figures within the digital asset and crypto space. So I'd like to, if I may, just turn to that side of things now and really ask you, how do you feel that digital assets, crypto, Web3, however you want to define it, how do you think that's going to help accelerate the pace of change within payments, and particularly with what you guys are building at Volt?
Yeah, as I mentioned, our vision is global real-time payments, preferably via account to account, but I'm also open to augmented support where account to account is not hitting the mark. And especially with cross-border, we are still quite far away from reaching the real value add that merchants and also we and consumers expect, which is cross-border real-time. So most markets now solve for the domestic real-time payment rails with account to account, but the cross-border use case is still not really solved now. So you still depend on SWIFT, which is slow. Right? Yes, they will move towards real-time, but how long will that really take across the world and across the financial institutions and markets that we find interesting? And at the same time, you have stable coins becoming regulated in all major jurisdictions. There's extremely fast bank adoption. You have XRP, Ripple, racing to sign deals left and right, if my Twitter feed is to be believed. So there are exciting movements that are fundamentally changing the payments landscape. There's still a question of pricing for crypto, where I think that from a treasury perspective, crypto sometimes is just too expensive. Maybe the price for individual transaction on chain is very cheap, but the retail price, since you also need to pay for infrastructure and salaries, is still very high. So there is still a gap, right? So what is the real worth or the real value of real time? So if you're a merchant operating in Singapore, you want to move around 10 million into a different country, do you rather pay 25 euros for SWIFT and wait 2 days, or do you pay 25 base points and have it instantly? So what is the real use case there, and how quickly will the price go down for that? Which are the merchants using this? What is the consumer impact? I do believe.
Do you have any particular predictions for that, or is it? Do you still feel it's a bit early for that at this point?
I think this process will take much longer than we currently anticipate. I think that we finally reached the stage where institutions are mass adopting crypto. There will still be a tandem approach where crypto and fiat need to live in symbiosis. So as much as we are looking at crypto ourselves, right, for cross-border, so that's a use case we're looking into, because I think it's resolves so much pain for money export, for money movements. I think there will be merchants and also PSPs that will just run their entire treasury on USDC for global collections, just to simplify things. So that will definitely happen. And there's also a movement the other way around. So you have crypto platforms that are moving much closer to fiat. So some of that is driven by regulation. So especially here in Europe, you have the MiCA regulation, where I expect many current large crypto platforms will really struggle to be compliant, and we will probably see a cleansing of the market. All of the players try to become regulated, not only for MiCA, but maybe also like us, an e-money licensed institution where they can manage their fiat and live it in both worlds. And then you have this asymmetry between Europe and the US now, where Europe is regulating and you have a market that will probably contract for crypto. And then you have the US where everybody wants to, or all these states want to have crypto reserves and are removing capital gains. So there is a asymmetric distribution of where the money and crypto will be going. And then the question is, how can someone like Volt, who finds both equally exciting, live in both of these worlds?
Fascinating. And I think, as you say, how that's going to continue to evolve over the coming months and years is going to be, I think, a topic for constant discussion on hopefully platforms like this. Well, it's been a fascinating chat so far, Stefan. It feels like we've really raced through quite a lot of topics, but I wanted to turn to our quickfire Mana round now. We're going to ask you a few questions, which will then lead to asking you what you believe your Mana is. So I'm going to crack straight on with that. The first one is, what in the industry or within, you know, within whether it's within Vault or something more macro, what's keeping you up at night?
I think it's the extremely accelerating pace of change in technology and the payments world, and this asymmetry between geographies. While Europe regulates a lot more, other markets are opening up. I think the problem there is that you will see a lot of founders, a lot of smart people migrating to other markets, especially the US, to innovate. If you also look at tech innovation in Europe, then the main problem we have is that there are not so many exciting ventures at the end of the day. So we have lost the ability and framework to innovate. If you're smart and you know it, you leave. So how can Europe be more competitive? How can we, especially in finance, remain competitive? If you look at also the exciting ventures that have come out of Europe, then it was almost only fintech ventures in the past 10, 15 years. We were always leading in fintech. With crypto, this will be flipped around. We will lose the leadership in fintech. All the innovation will move to the US, and then we need to see what's left in Europe. That is something that keeps me up, because I think, I mean, I'm German, I'm European, right? I want to innovate, I want to move things forward. Yeah, but I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are disappointed with the current environment.
Why have, in your view, why has Europe, or specifically maybe the EU, why do you think they transitioned to a mentality or a culture of perhaps more caution, as opposed to, like, as you say, 10, 15 years ago in the advent of fintech, where the ecosystem was much more prevalent to innovation?
I think I think there are many components to this, not only the European Union. I think if you look at the statistics, then also less people study math, engineering. So the core competencies that you need for innovation, I think we need a stronger focus on this throughout the education system to really produce the talent we need. Especially in Europe, we don't have so many resources, we don't have oil, right? So, or in very limited quantities. The thing that always drove Europe forward were smart people with good education, and then just like having a environment where they can innovate. So I think that is important. I think it really literally starts there to invest in education. I do agree that everybody loves the European dream. I mean, if you look at me, I've moved around, I've been everywhere, right? So I love that. I love mobility. I love the European idea. But I think there's a need to harmonize effectively across jurisdictions to have the same rules for everyone. So that is also, despite the European Union, I think there's still alignment needed across regions. And there are a lot of factors factoring into this. Yeah.
And just segueing exactly off that, there's I mean, you know, Dan and I see it all the time, right? You know, founders, not just founders, but investors as well, you know, becoming more attracted to hyper growth projects in the Middle East, for example, right? Or in the US, you know, Middle East is slightly more greenfield site. You know, US is, as we said before, slightly more developed, maybe. Europe is, you know, there is a level of fragmentation just because of the nature of the countries. And yes, we're trying to, you mentioned the word harmonizing there, which I think is the absolute key word, right? Trying to create a level of parity and sort of harmonizing, whether it's on a regulatory front, whether it's on a acceleration front, whether it's on, you know, a mission driven approach of like, okay, we are trying to achieve X, Y, Z. Do you think, going back to the crypto stablecoin narrative, do you think that will help accelerate and bring and sort of bridge borders effectively, or do you think there is a time lag attached to that as well?
Yeah, so I mean, I will bring out my glass ball, but I think if you look at the economic situation that is upon us, I think there will be a reality that will force us to be more innovation minded, right, and to loosen up a few rules. just to make sure that the economy has some incentives. So, and you see this already happening in the US, and I think that will also sooner or later reach Europe. So for me, a great example is the German automotive market, right? So there's so much stuff that's going on in automotive where the industry is being left behind and overtaken by other markets. You brought up Dubai, right? So Dubai is becoming a amazing innovation hub. I'm actually going to Money 2020 in the Middle East soon, and I'm also looking forward to explore all the things they're building there. So I think the center of innovations are shifting. They're reconfiguring. The talent is moving into different jurisdictions, and we need to make sure that we have a plan for Europe, right, to move things forward. So, yeah.
We always call this the quick fire round, but it very, very rarely is, because it just opens up so many discussion points off of what people say. But the second question is Steffen, is there a habit or maybe a particular mantra that sets you up for your day, or something that perhaps you tend to keep as a constant in your either personal, professional life, or maybe both?
I don't think there's a specific mantra or a term. I think the thing I'm very consistent with is that I enjoy my work. I enjoy working. I've always been like this. I'm curious. I also do like a certain continuity and predictability in my own day-to-day. So obviously, as a founder and entrepreneur, you're always busy, you travel a lot, you're firefighting. But actually, I also really like consistency in my day. I typically get up quite early. So 5:30, I'm usually up. And yeah, there's one thing that I absolutely love doing every morning. Like, all our internal reporting is timed to hit my mailbox at 7 o'clock. And we have a beautiful cafe and a bakery here around. And I love being there at 7 o'clock, having my first espresso, going through the emails when everybody's still sleeping. So I very much love that. And also doing sports is really important. So I very much like my watt bike. It actually, when we started Volt and had the seed round, first thing I bought was a home trainer for bike, also because we had a lockdown. So this, like, you need to have 2-3 things that keep you going through the day.
It sounds like kind of we're trying to incorporate some of those into your work as well, even better. Is there a passage in a book, or perhaps a quote that keeps you motivated, or one that's maybe resonated over your career?
Probably not a specific book or specific quote. There are 2 things that I very much remember that had an impact on me when I was still quite young. So I had 7 years of Latin in a Bavarian gymnasium. So that was quite intense. And we read all these ancient philosophers. So I very much like the concept of the Stoa and Seneca to build up resilience and to just passionately work towards what you enjoy doing and pursuing that with a long-term view. So being consistent in your decision making, and working towards your inner peace. And I think that also impacts the way I manage Volt and manage the teams I'm responsible for, because you do not want to have a volatile leader, right? You want to have predictability. You want to have someone who thinks ahead, but also someone who's not afraid of ad hoc fires. And that's why this concept of this Stoa very much resonated with me back in the days. So I try to incorporate it.
Those core values were instilled in you during that time in your life, you think?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I read back then all of that in school, and I had very good teachers. So yeah, it's something that really, really from the school time just stuck with me, and that I still carry with me, and that also has driven my CV and decision making, like how I do things. It also shapes some of your character traits and just how you interact with people.
Fantastic. And then finally, the question that the whole podcast is structured around. Steffen, what's your mana?
I think it's really tying into that narrative. I think it is resilience. No? So, and we talk about this in our leadership team quite often, because you need to work through long periods of uncertainty, especially as an entrepreneur, especially with regulatory changes, especially with expansion projects, commercial efforts, where the reward cycle is very, very long. So having the resilience to go through these prolonged periods of uncertainty, I think that is the superpower. And having the belief, the intrinsic belief in success, that you will get it done, that something can be made happen despite adversity. So I think that is absolutely the superpower. And yeah,
I think resilience is no doubt one of the core values that seems to run through, I'd say, at least 70% of the guests we've interviewed on the show. Lloyd interviewed Stani Kolechov of Aave a couple of weeks ago, and his I believe his mana was resilience as well. But then also, with him being at heart a product person, he then added I believe then that ability to kind of to test, change, move on very quickly. So as a part of his sort of core, I guess, like more his technical abilities. Do you think your background initially as a developer, as an engineer, do you think there's something that ties in with resilience, like from being a developer at heart?
I mean, I've been in the payments business also for a long time, and fintech, so financial technology, is especially tough, right? Because every error you commit or every issue you release immediately has major adverse impact on your customers and yourself, right? It's not just an ad that was like 3 pixels left and a bit off, but somebody is losing money. So having this, taking this very seriously, and also really making sure that if something goes wrong, you go through this pragmatically and analytically is very important. So having this resilience to work through ad hoc issues is very important. And it's also part of why we adopted this extreme ownership concept in the business, because there are some values that are very much aligned, right? With focus on the mission, focus on teamwork. Team is more important than ego, but also act quickly, right? So duck and cover and move on, right? So accomplishing the mission is important. But equally important is to know how you recover. So what are your recovery cycles? What do you need to recover? So I spend a lot of time outdoors in the mountains. So I live in southern Poland and spend a lot of time there in the Slovakian mountains, just to hike, spend a day to think. And I have a nice hobby, tractor restoration, right? And you would be surprised how many similarities there are between a fast growth fintech business and building a very trivial tractor restoration business. And it makes you appreciate also what a luxurious position you're in as a VC funded venture versus a bootstrapped venture that needs to survive month by month. So it's really important to have this balance and to think these things through.
I've got so many questions I could ask you about the tractor restoration side. That sounds fascinating, but I fear that we would be here for another hour. But that sounds like one of the most interesting hobbies that we've had so far on the show. But look, it's been fantastic to speak with you this afternoon, Steffen. Before we sign off, I guess, is there a particular something you'd like to particularly finish on? Perhaps telling the audience what's coming up for Volt, or what your feelings are for the remainder of this year? Anything in particular you would like to end on?
Yeah, maybe something for the audience, and also for maybe people who work with Volt and think about Volt. And maybe also one of the things that keeps me up most of the days now as well is really culture, the impact on culture, especially if the world around us seems to be changing ever faster and all kinds of crazy things are happening. So I really think it's important to look after your employees at this time of change around us. And so focusing on culture and really making sure that you provide certainty and confidence to the team. We, especially here in Poland, and our Polish team, have this quite often because we're, as you may know, quite close to the war in Ukraine, Russia. So for us, these things are very important to focus on the team and providing this long-term perspective and stability for them.
Amazing, and a great place to finish on, Steffen. Well, let me say again, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a fantastic chat, and thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this edition of the Searching for Mana podcast. We hope you've enjoyed it and hope to see you again next time. please subscribe to our YouTube, Spotify, or iTunes to make sure you receive all the latest episodes as they are released.